I've pulled people out of burning cars, carried bodies from flash floods, done CPR on kids half my daughter's age. But that day on the river, I still don't know what I pulled her from. She was 6, clinging to a log like she was waiting for me. Calm, smiling. Said a lady in blue told her I was coming. I don't know what that means. But I saw the footage later, and there were 2 heat signatures by that log. There was no one else. Name's Daniel Ruiz. Most folks just call me Danny. I'm 62 now. Retired firefighter. Spent most of my life with the Sevier County Search and Rescue. Before that, I served 10 years in the Army, 2 tours overseas. Came back, wanted to do something where I could still help folks, but sleep in my own damn bed. I live in Pigeon Forge now. Quiet place. Got a little porch, a stubborn old dog named Bear, and a wife who's way too patient for her own good. My girls are grown. One's in Knoxville, the other moved up to Ohio. Grandkids visit on holidays. Life slowed down a lot since the old days, and I like it that way. Back then, I didn't think much about retirement. Hell, didn't think much past the next call. You just go. You suit up, you load the truck, you get there. That's the job. Rain or shine, holiday or not, someone needs you, so you go. And March of 2010, that was one hell of a month. It rained for 3 days straight. Not the kind of rain that just soaks your boots a little. This was heavy, constant, bone-soaking rain. The kind that makes the rivers rise and the roads disappear. East Tennessee floods quick when it wants to. Mountains on one side, valleys on the other. Water's got nowhere to go but straight through people's homes. We'd been out non-stop, evacuating families, setting up temporary shelters, pulling folks off porches with boats. Power lines were down all over the county. Mudslides. One of our guys nearly broke his leg when the ground gave out under him near Wares Valley. I was tired. Not the need a nap tired. I mean the kind that sits behind your eyes, makes your bones ache. That tired. But you don't quit. You just keep your gear dry and your coffee hot. I remember it was the morning of the 18th. Real early. Maybe 5:30 or so. I hadn't even finished my first cup of coffee when dispatch called in a missing child near the Pittman Center Bridge, Little Pigeon River area. That whole region was barely accessible at that point. Roads were washed out, trees everywhere. I didn't ask questions, just grabbed my gear and headed to the site. When you hear missing child during a flood, your stomach tightens. Doesn't matter how many years you've done it. That combination, fast water and a kid, you know time's working against you. And in your head, you start counting backwards. How long she's been gone, how cold the water is, how strong the current's moving. I remember the name, Abigail Monroe, 6 years old. Folks called her Abby. Her mom said she was playing in the backyard. Fenced in, but the creek behind their property had overflowed, turned into a full-blown stream. Mom went to get towels from the dryer, came back. Abby was gone. Just gone. They searched, neighbors helped, but with how fast the water was moving, there was only one place she could have gone. I drove out there with 2 other guys from my unit. Carter was already up in the chopper with the thermal. We couldn't use drones back then like we do now. It was boots on the ground or eyes from the sky. That's all we had. The closer we got to the river, the worse the roads got. I had to ditch the truck and go the last bit on foot. Boots sinking in mud, branches snapping underfoot. I could hear the water before I saw it. Loud. Angry. That kind of roar that drowns out your thoughts. You don't mess with moving water like that. It don't care how many years you've served. We didn't expect to find her alive. I'll just say that straight. After 2 hours in those conditions, we were preparing for recovery, not rescue. But then Carter comes over the radio. He says, "I've got something. South Bank, near the old bridge. Looks like a kid on a log." I froze. He repeated it. "Still heat on her, she's moving." And just like that, we were running. I remember thinking, that's not possible. I've seen grown men taken by less water. Seen trees get uprooted and dragged like twigs. And here's this little girl, still alive. But I wasn't about to stop and ask questions. When we got to the edge of the river, I saw her. Clear as day, maybe 30 yards out, clinging to a half-submerged log like she was on a playground. Hair matted down, soaked to the bone. But she was calm. Not crying, not screaming, just holding on. We set the line. I clipped in. Current nearly took my legs out in the first 2 steps. Water was ice cold. Every breath felt like it stabbed my ribs. But I kept my eyes on her. That's all I could do. It took longer than I'd like to admit to reach her. Current kept pulling me sideways. Debris flying by. But when I got close enough to grab the log, I looked at her. And she smiled. She smiled at me like she'd been waiting. And she said, "I'll never forget it." She said, "You're Daniel. The lady in blue said you were coming." It stopped me cold. I said, "What lady, sweetie?" She just nodded. She was floating. She told me to hold on and not be scared, that you were almost here. Now, I've heard kids say strange things in trauma. You don't take everything at face value. They invent things. Fill in the blanks. That's normal. But this didn't feel made up. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't cold. Hell, her body temp was stable. No cuts, no bruises. And the weirdest part, there were no footprints around where we found her. No signs she'd climbed onto that log. It was like she was placed there. Later that night, Carter showed me the thermal footage. 2 heat signatures, clear as day. One was Abby, the other, right next to her. Human-sized. Then gone. I don't know what that was. I'm not a spiritual guy. Never talked much about ghosts or angels or whatever you want to call it. But I know what I saw. And I know what I heard from that little girl. And something about it still makes the hair on my arms stand up. Back in those days, I was on shift 5, sometimes 6 days a week. Didn't really bother me. My girls were older, didn't need me around as much. My wife, God bless her, knew what this job meant to me. She never gave me a hard time about the hours. And I loved the team. These were men and women I trusted with my life. We'd been through fires, crashes, tornadoes, drownings, you name it. You build a kind of second family in this line of work. Mornings usually started early. I'd be up around 4:30, sometimes before the alarm. Old habit from my Army days. I liked to sit with my coffee before the noise of the day kicked in. Black, strong, no sugar. Just the way my old man drank it. Sometimes I'd drive in early, open up the bay, check the gear. I was always one of those guys who had to put hands on everything. Rope, regulators, oxygen tanks. I didn't trust it should be fine. I needed to know it was fine. That March, though, that month was different. There was something off about the air. Not just the humidity from the rain, but the way it settled into your bones, like the mountains were holding their breath. Everyone was on edge. Dispatch was going nuts. Too many calls, not enough trucks, not enough boots on the ground. You'd finish one rescue and get called straight into another. No time to eat, barely time to piss. We were doing boat rescues in places that used to be roads. I remember one trailer park down near Gatlinburg. We had to swim in. Waist-deep sewage and water full of branches and broken furniture. People clinging to rooftops, screaming. We got 'em out, all of them, but it wore us down. I lost count of how many families we moved out of flooded homes that week. Some were stubborn, didn't want to leave. Said they'd lived through worse. You learn quick not to argue. Just look 'em in the eye and say, "You got grandkids, you want to see 'em again? Then pack a damn bag." That usually did it. Between calls, we'd try to catch our breath, sit on the tailgate, boots soaked, uniforms smelling like river mud and diesel. Somebody'd pass around beef jerky or a soggy sandwich. No one talked much, not when it got that bad. You save the jokes for better days. The thing about flood season is, it ain't like a fire. Fire's got a rhythm. You fight, you win or lose. It's over. Water. It keeps creeping. Silent. It waits. Then it takes everything at once. You don't see it coming until it's too late. I remember this one shift. We'd just gotten back from pulling a guy out of a submerged pickup near Jones Cove. He didn't make it. Current slammed him into a guardrail, pinned him there. By the time we got to him, it was done. I still remember his wedding ring. That's what caught my eye under the surface. Glint of metal where it shouldn't have been. We logged that call, cleaned off, sat down for maybe 10 minutes, and boom, another one, child missing. Little girl. Creek took her. Same story, different zip code. It was like that every day that week. Constant motion, no room for feelings, no time for questions. You just kept moving, kept pulling people out. That's what made Abby different. That silence. Most kids in a flood, if they're still breathing, they're screaming, crying, panicking. I've seen it. I've held kids so tight I couldn't feel my own arms afterward. But this one? When I saw her on that log, she wasn't crying. She wasn't even shaking. I don't mean to get ahead of myself, but thinking back, it didn't match the pattern. None of it did. Anyway, our station was always ready this time of year. We kept the boats gassed up. Ropes, wetsuits, axes, spare batteries. We checked everything twice. You don't want to be the guy fumbling in a flood because you didn't test your flashlight. That's how people die. We had an old school crew. Carter, my buddy in the chopper, he'd been flying since Desert Storm. Didn't trust fancy gear. Still kept a paper map folded in his jacket. Wouldn't let anyone touch it. Satellites fail, ink doesn't, he used to say. We also had a couple younger folks coming up. Green but solid. I always tried to teach them not just what to do, but how to think, how to read the river, how to watch the sky, how to listen to that gut feeling that says, this ain't right. You lose that instinct, you get someone killed. We weren't heroes. I know folks like to throw that word around. The truth is, we were just stubborn. Too damn stubborn to let go when someone needed saving. I remember one night, around the 16th, I think, we got back from a late call. Some old guy stuck in a barn that had filled with water. Took us 2 hours to reach him. We were all soaked, freezing. I sat down, peeled off my gloves, and one of the rookies asked me, "Why do you still do this, after all these years?" I didn't have a good answer. I just looked at him and said, "Because tomorrow, it's going to be somebody else's kid." That's what it always came down to. You didn't save strangers. You saved somebody's baby, somebody's brother, somebody's grandpa. That's what kept you going. So when the 18th rolled around and we heard about a 6-year-old girl swept away by the river, every one of us moved. No hesitation. We'd all seen what that water could do. We knew time wasn't on her side, but we also knew this county, these creeks, these roads, and deep down, I think we all hoped this one would end different. March 18th, 2010. I remember the date like it's burned into the back of my eyelids. Some days fade together over time. That one never did. I got the call at 5:42 in the morning. I remember because I was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table, trying to get some coffee down before heading in. My wife was still asleep upstairs. House was quiet, except for the rain tapping on the windows. Not hard, just steady, like it had been for 3 damn days straight. Phone rang, and I knew it wasn't going to be good. We'd been running nonstop all week, and something about the tone in the dispatcher's voice told me right away. It was bad. "Missing child," she said. "Female, 6 years old. Elkmont area, near Pittman Center Bridge. Creek overran the backyard. Mother says she was there 1 second and gone the next." I didn't ask anything else. Just said, "I'm on my way." Put my gear in the truck. I always kept it packed. Waders, dry suit, rope, gloves, mask, radio. It was all there. Years of habit. I didn't even wake my wife. No point. She knew what that kind of call meant. Drive out there was rough. Roads already half flooded. Debris everywhere. Trees leaning where they shouldn't be. There's something about early morning after days of rain that makes everything feel heavy. Like the land itself is tired. Sky was that dull gray, no color to it. Just wet and flat and endless. I met up with 2 other guys from the unit at a staging point near the bridge. Tom, Avery, and Malik. Good men. Trustworthy. We'd worked a few rescues together already that week. No time for small talk. Just a nod and a glance at the rising water. By then, the Little Pigeon River wasn't a river anymore. It was a moving wall of brown. Fast, cold, angry. You could feel it in your chest when you got close. That low, rolling sound that never stops. Like a growl from the earth. Couple of sheriff's deputies were already on scene talking to the mother. She looked wrecked. Wet clothes, muddy hands, pacing in tight little circles. I didn't want to crowd her, but I needed the facts. "Name's Abby," she said. "Abigail Monroe, 6 years old. Brown hair, pink rain boots." I turned my back for 30 seconds. Just 30 seconds. She was chasing frogs by the fence and then gone. That backyard sloped right down toward the water. Fence had been ripped away during the night. She didn't stand a chance if the current took her. We started walking the bank, looking for anything, a shoe, a piece of clothing, drag marks in the mud. Nothing. No footprints, no signs. Water had swept the whole area clean. I remember thinking, we're too late. But I didn't say it out loud. Never say that out loud. Carter came over the radio from the chopper about an hour into the search. He'd been scanning upstream and down with thermal. "I got something," he said. "Might be her. You don't let hope in too fast. Not after this many years. You learn to hold it at arm's length." "Where?" I asked. "South side, down near the old bridge pilings. There's a log jam out there. She's on it. She's moving." I looked over at Tom. He looked back, just shook his head once like no way. It had been too long. Water that cold? A little girl? But we ran. I was in the water first. I didn't wait for permission or a plan. Tied a rope off to a tree and clipped in. That river was strong. Took everything I had just to stay upright. Felt like it wanted to rip my legs off. Every step forward was a fight. I kept thinking about my own girls, when they were little. Abby was about the same age they were when they used to jump in puddles and yell at me to watch them twirl. I got close enough to see her, pink boots still on, arms around a thick log stuck in the middle of the current, water rushing past her like a freight train, and she looked at me, calm, not crying, not scared, just waiting. I yelled out to her, told her my name, told her I was there to help. She just nodded, said something I couldn't hear at first. Had to get closer. When I finally reached the log, I grabbed on and pulled myself beside her. Her little fingers were clenched so tight I could barely pry them loose, but she didn't fight me. She just looked me dead in the eyes and said it. "You're Daniel. The lady in blue said you were coming." I swear to God those were her words. Now, I don't know what hit me harder, the fact that she knew my name or the way she said it. Like she wasn't surprised, like she was just confirming something she already knew. I said, "What lady, Abby?" She pointed toward the water behind her. "The one who floated. She told me to wait, said you'd find me." There was nothing behind her, just current. Nothing upstream but trees and more water. I got her secured in the harness, gave the signal to pull us back. Every second in that current felt like wrestling with a bear, but we made it. Got her to the bank, wrapped her in a blanket. Paramedics checked her over. Normal vitals. No hypothermia. No injuries. Just a tired, muddy kid who kept smiling at me like she knew some kind of secret. It didn't hit me until later, when I saw Carter again and he pulled me aside. "I didn't want to say it over the radio," he said, "but there were 2 heat signatures out there. One was her. The other was bigger, right next to her. Then it vanished." He showed me the footage. I watched it 10 times. 2 distinct shapes, side by side. Then one disappears just as I reach her. I don't know what to make of that. I've never said much about it over the years. Folks start throwing around words like angel or ghost or guardian. That ain't me. I've seen too much real death to get caught up in fairy tales. But I know what I saw. And I know what that little girl said. And that's why that day never left me. I've been in that river 100 times, maybe more. Pulled out drunks, crash victims, even a couple animals. I know that current. I know what it can do. But that morning, standing on the bank, staring at that log in the middle of the flood, it didn't feel like the river I knew. It looked meaner, like it had something to prove. The current was fast, real fast. Debris floating by every second. Broken branches, chunks of wood, even somebody's trash can, all of it moving like bullets. That water wasn't just flowing. It was charging, angry, loud. You had to shout just to hear each other a few feet apart. Abby was out there maybe 20, 30 yards from the edge. The log she was on had wedged between some rocks or old bridge pilings, just barely holding. If it shifted, she was gone. She wasn't crying. That's what stuck with me. A 6-year-old girl, alone in a river that had killed grown men that same week, and she was just holding on, looking around like it was recess. Her face didn't show fear, just patience, like she knew I'd come. I wasn't buying it. You don't survive that kind of water by accident, and you sure as hell don't do it calmly. We had one shot at it. No time for second plans. The log was too far out for a ladder or pole. Helicopter couldn't drop a line safely with all the wind shear and debris flying around. That left me. Dive trained. Roped in. I knew it before anyone said a word. Tom looked at me and just gave me a quick nod. Malik was already tying off the rope. I remember tightening the straps on my vest, checking my clips. I've done it 100 times, but that day my hands felt slow. Not shaky, just heavy, like they knew this one might go sideways. I looked at her one more time. She was watching me, like she knew. I stepped into the water and it hit like a hammer, cold and fast. Took my breath for a second. That first step, the current grabbed my legs and tried to take me downstream. I leaned into it, dug in hard. One foot, then the next. Rope tight to the tree, clipped at the waist. Every step I braced. Waited for the river to shift under me. It did. Every damn step. Halfway out I almost lost it. Foot slipped on something, rock, root, whatever, and the current spun me sideways. If that rope hadn't been tied off just right, I'd have gone under. Got my footing back, but I felt it in my shoulder for weeks after. Pulled something. Didn't care at the time. I kept pushing forward. My boots felt like they weighed 50 pounds. I could hear Carter in my earpiece guiding me. 5 feet left. 3 forward. But I wasn't really listening anymore. All I could see was that girl on that log, waiting like none of this scared her. When I got close enough, maybe 10 feet away, I had to shift and crawl. Water was nearly up to my chest. The log was slick, covered in moss and mud. I grabbed on with my left hand, held the rope tight with my right, and eased my way over. She just watched me, didn't say a word until I was right next to her. Then she said, "You're Daniel." Not, "What's your name?" Not, "Who are you?" She told me. That hit me hard. My name's not on my gear, just the department patch. I looked at her and said, "How do you know that, sweetheart?" She smiled and said, "The lady in blue told me." Now look, I've heard a lot of strange things in rescue. People hallucinate, they panic, they misremember. Kids especially. They've got wild imaginations. But this didn't feel like imagination. This felt like fact. Like she was reciting something she knew, not guessing. I wanted to ask more, but I had a job to do. I told her we were going to move real slow, that I was going to strap her into the harness and we'd get pulled back together. She just nodded, like she'd heard it all before. Didn't flinch. Didn't resist. I wrapped the strap around her chest and clipped her to my belt. Told Carter we were ready. That trip back to shore felt 10 times longer than the way out. The current had picked up. The log shifted as we left it. I remember glancing back once and seeing it spin loose. Whatever had been holding it in place gave way. If we'd waited another minute, maybe less, she'd have been gone. I kept her close. One arm around her, the other on the rope. She didn't cry, didn't say a word, just kept her eyes on the bank like she knew exactly where we were going. Water slammed into us a few times. Nearly lost my grip once, had to dig my boots into the mud to keep us upright. But I didn't let go. I couldn't. When we reached the edge, hands grabbed us. Tom, Malik, a couple deputies. They got Abby up first, wrapped her in a dry blanket. She was shivering but still calm, like she'd just come in from recess. One of the paramedics said her pulse was steady. No signs of hypothermia, no bruises, not a scratch on her. She looked over at me and said, "Told you she said you were coming." That's when I had to walk away. I didn't want the guys to see my face. Went and leaned against a tree, tried to catch my breath, not from the swim, but from the weight of it, from the things that didn't add up. I've done dozens of rescues, maybe more. Every one of them leaves something behind, a smell, a sound, a bruise. This one left questions I still don't have answers for. I don't know how she stayed on that log. I don't know how she knew my name. And I sure as hell don't know who or what the lady in blue was. But I know I saw her smile. And I know that River tried its best to take her, and it didn't win. I've thought about that moment more times than I can count. Me on that log, freezing, soaked to the bone, barely keeping my footing, and Abby just sitting there like she was waiting for a school bus. Not a scratch on her. Hair dripping, cheeks red, eyes wide open and steady. That's what hit me the most. Her eyes. I've seen plenty of scared kids, seen what panic looks like. It's wild and fast and loud. But Abby, she was quiet. Not out of shock. Not frozen with fear. She was settled. Like someone had explained what was going to happen, and she believed them. That river should have ripped her apart. No sugarcoating it. A kid that size, in water that cold and fast. 15 minutes is all it takes, maybe less. But she'd been out there over an hour, and she wasn't even shaking. I asked her if she was hurt. She shook her head. Cold, I said. Nope, she answered. Her voice was soft but clear. No stutter. No whimper. I asked if she could move her fingers and toes. She wiggled them both. I looked her over. No bruises, no cuts. Her hands were dirty, sure, and her clothes were soaked. But everything about her said she'd been sitting there calmly, not fighting for her life. That's when I said, "What's your name?" She looked up at me and said, "You already know. The lady told you." I remember the hair standing up on the back of my neck. I said, "What lady?" She looked past me, off into the river, and said, "The lady in blue. She was floating. She stayed with me." Now I know how kids can be. They say weird stuff. They dream things, mix up cartoons with real life. But this wasn't a daydream. Her tone wasn't playful. She wasn't telling me a story. She was telling me the truth as she understood it. She said I'd be okay, that you were coming. I didn't know what to say to that, so I focused on the job. I told her we were going to get her out of there and that I needed her to stay still. She said, "I know." Just like that, like she'd done this before. I got her clipped to my belt, secured the rope tight, and started waving the signal back to the guys on shore. The moment I let go of that log, it gave a shudder underneath us, like it had been holding on just long enough. We started moving back, slow and steady. The current was stronger than before. Each step felt like dragging cinder blocks through mud. I kept one hand on the rope, one arm tight around Abby. She leaned into me a little, not scared, not desperate, just close, like she knew I'd carry the weight. I could feel her heartbeat through her jacket, slow, steady. Back on shore, when they took her from me and started checking her vitals, I felt myself drop to one knee. My legs were jelly, not from the current, but from everything I was trying to hold in. Carter landed the chopper nearby and came over fast. He had this look on his face I didn't recognize. Not surprise, not relief. Something else. He pulled me aside, away from the crowd. "You need to see this," he said. He had the tablet with the thermal footage, showed me the exact moment we spotted Abby. I saw her heat signature, small, bright, unmoving. But there was something else, right next to her, bigger, human-sized. "You see it?" he asked. I nodded. "Second signature," he said. "Same temperature range, not a reflection, not an animal, too still to be driftwood. It was there for a full 30 seconds before you reached her. Then, gone, just vanished." I didn't say anything, just stared at it. He closed the screen and said, "I don't know what to tell you, Danny." But she wasn't alone. Later that day, I sat with Abby at the hospital, just me and her in the room while her mom stepped out. She was sitting up in bed, eating a cup of applesauce like it was any other day. "You okay, sweetheart?" I asked. She nodded. "Do you remember what happened?" I said. She took another bite, wiped her mouth, and said, "I fell. The water took me, but then the lady caught me. She held my hand. She told me not to be scared. She said she used to be a mommy." That last part stopped me. "She used to be a mommy?" I asked. Uh-huh. She said her babies didn't grow up, but she still watches kids. I just sat there. You don't forget a thing like that. You try to file it away. Try to chalk it up to imagination or some kind of trauma-induced memory. But deep down, you know, kids don't make that stuff up out of nowhere. She looked at me again before her mom came back and said, "She said you were a good daddy. That's why you came." I didn't have anything left to say. I just nodded, stood up, and walked out. Back at the station, I didn't tell the whole story to the guys. Just said she was safe, that we got her out clean. They didn't ask for more. I think they could see in my face that something about it had changed me. Over the years, I've played that moment over in my head. Her voice, her words, the way she looked past me when she talked about that lady in blue, like she could still see her. I never saw anything myself, just that thermal image, just the calm in that little girl's face. But I felt something, not like a presence, more like absence of fear, like something bigger had already been there before me. And when I think about how she survived out there, how that log held, how the current didn't take her, I don't have answers, but I know what I felt when I reached her. It wasn't just me out there. We got back to base around noon, maybe a little later. Everything was wet, my boots squished with every step. My fingers looked like prunes, and I had a chill deep in my chest that wouldn't go away. Not from the water, something else, something I couldn't name. Usually, after a call like that, you feel something lift off your back. That relief when it's over and nobody died. That didn't happen this time. I should have felt proud. Hell, we saved a little girl from drowning. That's the kind of thing people write articles about. But all I felt was unsettled. The drive back was quiet. Malik rode up front. Tom was passed out in the back seat, arms crossed, head against the window. I just stared out at the rain, tapping the wheel with my thumb. Carter called me as soon as we pulled in. "You need to come see this," he said. Didn't say why. Didn't have to. I met him inside the station, in the equipment room. He had the thermal footage pulled up on a laptop. No small talk, no setup, just hit play. At first it looked normal. Trees, river, moving shapes. Then the log came into view. A small white dot. That was Abby. You could see her heat signature clear and still. But just to her left, another one. Brighter, bigger, holding still. "That's what we saw before you got there," Carter said. She wasn't alone. I leaned closer. My gut clenched. "Could have been a rock," I said. "Sun heated or something." "Nope," he said. "Temperature's too high. Rocks don't hold that kind of heat in this weather." "Could be an animal." He shook his head. No movement, and it was upright. The footage showed me getting closer, just a faint shape crossing into view. Then, just before I reached Abby, that second heat signal faded. Like a switch flipped. It didn't drift away. It didn't run. It just disappeared. "Maybe a trick of the camera," I said, but even I didn't buy that. Carter looked at me, serious. "You ever seen anything like that before?" I wanted to say yes, wanted to come up with some logical answer, but I couldn't. "No," I said. "Not once." He closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair. "Look, I'm not saying it was anything. Just not nothing." That sat with me. Not nothing. I didn't know what to do with it. I kept thinking about what she said. The lady in blue. How she knew my name. How she was just waiting. Not crying. Not freezing. Just sitting there like someone told her exactly what would happen and when. That footage rattled me more than anything I'd seen in my 20 years doing this job. I've dealt with mangled cars, house fires, drownings, suicide calls, things that make you lose sleep. But at least those things made sense. You could put them in a report, you could explain them. This didn't belong in any report. I went home that night and sat in the truck for almost a full hour, just staring at the dashboard, rain still coming down. My jacket still damp. When I walked through the door, my wife looked at me and said, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah." But I wasn't. She could tell. She didn't push. I took a hot shower, Tried to clear my head. Thought maybe it would feel different in the morning. It didn't. Next day, I went by the hospital to check on Abby. She was sitting up in bed watching cartoons. Same calm face. Her mom was tired but relieved, grateful. Gave me a hug. Before I left, I crouched down next to Abby's bed and said, "You doing all right, sweetheart?" She nodded, took my hand, her little fingers barely wrapped around mine. "She said you'd be okay too," she said. I asked, "The lady in blue?" She smiled. "She said you used to carry people a long time ago. Now you do it different. She said she's proud of you." I didn't say anything. Couldn't. Because here's the thing. I did carry people a long time ago. In the army. Things I've never told anyone about. Things I left overseas and never planned on dragging back. How would she know that? I left the room and walked straight to the chapel down the hall. Sat in the back pew and just breathed. Not to pray. I'm not that guy. I just needed to sit somewhere quiet. That night, I didn't sleep. I just laid there staring at the ceiling. Something about all of it was wrong and right at the same time. Like being pulled in two directions, logic and something else. Something I didn't have a word for. I told myself maybe she saw something. A nurse in scrubs. Someone in a blue poncho. Maybe a trick of the light. Maybe she heard my name from the radio and convinced herself someone told her. That's what I told myself. But it never sat right. And the footage, I kept coming back to that. I showed it to one of the younger guys at the station just to get a second opinion. Didn't say anything up front, just played it. First thing out of his mouth was, "Who's that standing next to her?" When I told him no one was there, his face changed. He got quiet, backed away from the screen. I stopped showing it after that. The footage got filed. It's probably buried in some server now, under a dozen layers of red tape. Official report said she was rescued safely, that she was lucky. Nothing more. But that's not the truth. The truth is, there was something else there that day. Something I can't explain. And for the rest of my life, I'll carry that silence. Because sometimes, silence says more than the report ever could. The day after the rescue, I went back to work like nothing happened. That's the job. Doesn't matter what shook you yesterday. You put your boots back on and answer the next call. But something stuck with me. Not just the footage, not just what Abby said. It was the way I felt when I got home that night. The way I sat on the edge of the bed, boots still on, staring at the wall like I was waiting for something to make sense. My wife walked in and said, "You're back early." I said, "Yeah." And that was it. I couldn't talk about it. Couldn't explain what didn't make sense to begin with. That's the part people don't get about this kind of work. It's not always the blood or the trauma that gets to you. Sometimes it's the things that don't add up. The ones that gnaw at you quiet, day after day. For the next couple weeks, I went through the motions. Calls came in. We ran them. Floodwaters started to recede. People began patching up what they lost. You drive through neighborhoods and see couches and kids' toys piled up on curbs like garbage. That's how fast normal can disappear in this part of the country. But every night when things slowed down, my mind went right back to that log in the river. I kept seeing her face. Abby's eyes looking straight at me. That calm little smile. The way she said, "The lady told me." Like it was the most normal thing in the world. I tried to file it away, like I'd done with other things before. You have to. I've carried bodies out of houses, pulled fathers out of crushed trucks, watched mothers scream over what was left, and I learned to carry those things in a place deep down, locked up tight. But this one wouldn't go in the box. It wasn't trauma. It was mystery. And mystery don't sit easy with men like me. We like facts. We like cause and effect. A to B. If something's broken, fix it. If something's lost, find it. But this felt like a story someone forgot to finish. A couple weeks later, Abby's mom sent a card to the station. Inside was a photo of Abby, standing in front of her school, smiling like nothing had ever happened. On the back, her mom wrote, Thank you for bringing my little girl home. She still talks about you. And the lady in blue. I kept that card. Still have it. Taped it inside my locker for a while. Not because I needed the thanks, but because I needed proof. Something to remind me it was real. About a month later, I ran into Carter at a local diner. He was sitting at the counter, coffee in front of him, staring at nothing in particular. I sat down next to him. We didn't say much at first. Then he said, "You ever talk to anyone about that day?" I shook my head. "Nope." He nodded. "Me neither." Then he added, "Sometimes I wonder if I imagined the whole damn thing." I said, "You didn't." And we left it at that. Because what were we going to do? Tell the chief? File a special report that says, possibly not alone during rescue? No one would take it seriously. And even if they did, what difference would it make? The girl was safe. That's what mattered. That's what should have been enough. But it wasn't. Not for me. I started reading stuff I'd never touched before. Not ghost stories. Just case reports, other rescue incidents, search and rescue files from other counties, other states. You'd be surprised how many of them include something strange. Kids found in impossible places. Survivors who say someone stayed with them. Unseen hands, unfamiliar voices. But none of it's in the official reports. Just buried in the stories, passed around between crews. I talked to one old smoke jumper from Montana. Retired like me. Said he once found a lost boy deep in the forest. Kid told him a tall man in brown had walked with him at night and kept him warm. No footprints, no prints from the kid even. Said the ground was frozen solid. It made me feel less crazy. Not better. Just not alone. The thing about getting older is you realize how many things in life don't get tied up in neat little bows. You stop expecting answers. You just try to carry the weight without letting it crush you. Still, every now and then I wonder, why me? Why did she know my name? Why did that day unfold the way it did? Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just a scared kid who got lucky. Maybe the camera glitched. Maybe I was too tired, too worn down to think clearly. Or maybe something was out there with her. Something that wanted her to live. Something that made sure I found her. I don't know. And I'll probably never know. But that's the part I carry. I never talked to Abby again after that day at the hospital. Thought about visiting a few times. Even drove past her school once or twice. But something stopped me. Maybe I didn't want to ask more questions. Maybe I was afraid of the answers. I heard she moved to Knoxville a few years later. Doing good from what I've heard. Smart kid, straight A's, likes to draw. I hope she never loses that smile. And I hope whatever she saw that day gave her peace. 'Cause it sure as hell shook something loose in me that ain't ever settled back into place. It's been 15 years since that rescue. I've been retired a while now. Long enough that the newer guys at the station probably don't even know my name. I don't mind. Time moves on. So do people. But that day, that girl, that river, none of it moved on inside me. I've tried to make sense of it more times than I can count. I've gone back over the footage, replayed every second of the call in my head. Thought about every word Abby said, every look she gave me. The way she held on to that log, calm as can be. The way she looked through me when she said, "The lady in blue told me." You don't forget something like that, no matter how much you want to. I've come close to talking about it a few times. Once, with my wife. I was sitting out on the porch, glass of bourbon in my hand, sun going down. She came out, sat beside me, and said, "That rescue. You've never told me what really happened." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I just shook my head. She didn't push. Just took my hand and sat with me a while. Some things are too big for words, or maybe we just don't want to hear ourselves say them out loud. Like saying it makes it too real. There's a part of me that still tries to explain it away. That stubborn old voice in the back of my head that says, "You're tired, you imagined it. The girl heard your name from a radio. The camera glitched." But there's another part, quiet, steady, that says, "You know what you saw, you know what she said." And that voice never got quieter with time. I've seen death up close, seen what this world can do when it's at its worst. I've zipped up body bags, held hands with people as they slipped away. That stuff stays with you, but you learn to carry it. You put it in the back room of your mind and keep the door shut. This wasn't like that. This wasn't something I carried. It was something that carried me, in a way. After all these years, I don't talk about it much. Not because I'm scared folks won't believe me, but because I don't have answers. And I've come to realize that not everything is meant to be understood. Sometimes the best thing you can do is admit that something happened, that it mattered, that it left a mark. And this left a mark. It changed the way I see things, made me pay more attention to quiet moments, to small things. A bird landing on a porch rail, the way the fog lifts off the hills in the morning, the way my granddaughter looks at me when I tell her a story, like every word is treasure. Before that day, I thought I'd seen it all, thought I had this world figured out. I'd seen enough wreckage, enough pain, enough miracles to know how things worked. But after Abby, I stopped being so sure. I started believing there might be more. Not in a religious way, not in some big lights and angels kind of thing. Just more. Something that doesn't fit inside a report or a checklist. Something that watches. That waits. That shows up when we least expect it. I don't think it's about saving everyone. If that were true, I've seen too many who didn't make it. But maybe, just maybe, it's about showing up for the ones who need to know they're not alone. The ones who are dangling between here and gone and need a reason to hold on a little longer. Maybe Abby needed that. Maybe I did too. Some nights when it rains steady, I'll stand by the window and watch the water run down the glass. And for a split second, I'm back there, on that riverbank, rope in hand, watching a 6-year-old girl sit calmly in the middle of chaos. And I think about what she said. She used to be a mommy. Now she watches kids. If I'd heard that from anyone else, I'd have shrugged it off. But coming from her, in that place, in that moment, I believed it. Still do. Maybe there are people who don't go away completely when they're gone. Maybe they hang around for reasons we'll never understand. Maybe the ones who've lost the most become the ones who guard what's left. I don't know. All I know is I wasn't alone on that river, and neither was Abby. And even now, all these years later, when I think about the worst things I've seen in my career, the crushed cars, the screaming, the silence after impact, that day still stands apart. Not because it was the hardest. Not because it was the most dangerous, but because it was the one that left me with more questions than answers. And because for one small, impossible moment, something I couldn't explain stood between life and death, and chose life. If you've stuck with me this far, I appreciate it. I really do. Most folks don't want to hear these kinds of stories. Not the real ones anyway. They want the headline, the punchline, or the miracle, nice and tidy. Something they can put in a comment box or share with their aunt on Facebook. But life's not tidy. Not the kind of life I lived anyway. I spent over 2 decades in uniform, Army first, then rescue. Long enough to know that most people never see the things we see. And I thank God for that. Because once you've seen what water can do to a body, or what silence sounds like when you show up too late, there's no going back. You carry it, whether you want to or not. But this one, Abby, this was different. And I don't share it because I'm looking for answers. I'm not. Not anymore. I'm sharing it because maybe someone out there has had a moment like that. Something they couldn't explain. Something that stayed with them longer than it should have. A voice, a feeling, a presence they never talked about. Maybe they've kept it to themselves for years, like I did. Maybe they're afraid folks will laugh or look at them sideways. Well, I won't. I've seen too much to laugh at anybody's truth. Because let me tell you something. After everything I've lived through, I believe there are things out there we'll never be able to name. Not ghosts, not angels, just something else. Call it what you want. But I know it's there. I felt it the moment I stepped in that river. I saw it in Abby's eyes. I heard it in her voice when she told me she wasn't scared. And I saw it disappear from the thermal cam just as I got to her. You can call it coincidence. You can call it imagination. You can call it whatever fits your world. But for me, it was real. I think back sometimes to the men I served with overseas, the ones who made it and the ones who didn't. I wonder, now and then, if maybe someone was watching them too. If someone unseen stood in the gap for them, even just for a second. We don't talk about this stuff enough, especially us men, especially us older guys. We're taught to keep it shut, bottle it up, move on. But all that does is fill you up with questions and guilt and silence. So here I am, sitting in my garage with a coffee that's gone cold, telling whoever's listening that something happened out there on the Little Pigeon River that I'll never forget. Not because it scared me, but because it changed me. And maybe, if you've ever had something like that in your life, something strange, something quiet, something you didn't dare say out loud, maybe you're not crazy. Maybe you're not alone. I don't care if it was a dream or a hunch or a whisper in the dark. If it kept you safe, or kept you going, or gave you just enough strength to hold on one more day, then it mattered. And that's worth talking about. So if you've got a story like that, one you've never told, maybe now's the time. You don't have to believe in anything special. You don't have to explain it right. Just share it. Maybe somebody else out there needs to hear it. Maybe somebody else is still wondering if what they felt was real. I know I was. And it took a 6-year-old girl in a flood, talking about a lady in blue, to remind me that some things don't have to make sense to be true. Thanks for hearing me out. Really. I didn't think I'd ever tell this story. But now that I have, I'm glad I did.